Warning, the following program was produced for traditional broadcast television. Over 12 minutes of commercials have been removed, but interruptions are still included. Thank you for watching.
What we're seeing is a diffusion of both cultures as Bitcoiners infuse many of our ideals within the mainstream, and Bitcoin serves as a vehicle to sort of heighten awareness.
What's your thoughts on the debate that's currently taking place in Bitcoin?
You know, there are people I deeply respect, both technical and non-technical, who are on opposite sides of this. It's really quite a combative sort of culture. I think that's a very healthy thing to have every now and then so that we can develop a consensus about the way forward.
What are Bitcoiners doing right and what are they doing wrong?
I think we could do a better job of
government officials insist we will continue to keep you informed as this story unfolds.
Welcome to the Money Block with Matthew J. Moore, the Bitcoin-focused program that's waking the masses to the fiat money Ponzi scheme. Money is changing, and your freedom is at stake. So stick around and learn how to empower yourself for this new digital age. Now, here's your host, Matthew J. Moore.
And so, welcome, America. Welcome, world. Man, you have tuned in at the right time, right place. This is the Money Block, syndicated coast to coast on Biz TV. And we want to welcome all you Bitcoin newbies, lovers, and experts. And do we have a treat for you today? A guest that's been covering the Bitcoin news, culture, commentary for some time. One of the largest followings on Twitter, or X, I should say, when it comes to Bitcoin. His name is Archie. He's with the Bitcoin Archive. That's the name of his account, his brand. Archie, we got a short amount of time in this first segment, but I do want to tease the audience here about what we're going to be talking about, which is obviously the impact of Bitcoin. Like I said, you've been involved for some time, got quite the following. They say that Bitcoin often changes people. Has Bitcoin truly changed you, is the question.
Oh, absolutely it has. You know, it's changed the way that I look at the world, look at my health, look at my relationships. It really does put everything into focus as to what's really important to me, because, you know, monetary debasement robs you of your savings, and when you've spent your lifetime earning those savings, it makes a difference to you. It's essentially like monetary debasement robs you of your time. And so when you know that you've got less and less time, you tend to value that more and focus on the things that really matter to you, which is family, friends, good health, good times, good cheer.
I love that philosophy, and it's so true for so many Bitcoiners. A lot of us have that phrase, fix the money, fix the world, and some people like to ridicule it. How true do you think that statement is?
I think it very much is true. You know, when you have broken money, it tends to incentivize things that are not necessarily for the good of humanity, but rather just purely for financial outcomes. Now, you know, we're all capitalists and we all want to make money. We want to put out there products and services that serve the community and generate a profit. But sometimes when the money is broken, it tends to incentivize malpractices and malbehavior, and people who don't necessarily deserve to be invested into find themselves with an abundance of capital to deploy for businesses that just have no need in the world. And so we see that quite often, where zombie businesses perpetually sort of survive, and they're out there and they undercut viable businesses that are ethical and they deploy moral practices, and they care about their customer, they care about the quality of their product. But what tends to happen is when you have these unethical businesses that have no sort of moral foundation being funded, they undercut these essential practices that underpin what our products should be delivering, which is good health, good cheer, family, community, all of these things that are really important for us to thrive as a society.
Yeah, money is half of every transaction, as they like to say. And, Bitcoin is playing a big part in revolutionizing how we look at money, how money works. And one thing I am very grateful for is that it's been this dialogue, this conversation about sound, decentralized money, and has opened the eyes of millions of people, a whole generation, to sound and good money. And I'm really looking forward to diving into your story, going deeper, getting more of the personal aspects of how Bitcoin has impacted you. But more importantly, hopefully those who are watching will walk away from this realizing how just amazing Bitcoin is, because we're touching so many parts of so many people's lives and so many parts of society. All right, guys, we got to run to break, but when we come back, we got more. We're going to dive deeper into the meat. Stay put. Stay tuned. What does it mean to be physically, spiritually, and financially free? The right to life, liberty, property, and the pursuit of happiness, these were the ideas that made America. But what happens to these ideas when America's money becomes compromised? What do you do when the very thing that you're working for day after day is fundamentally designed to enslave you? Whether it was a conspiracy or not, you won't believe what is about to happen in this country. Arm yourself today with the truth and build your life on the foundations for liberty. Rediscover freedom in the 21st century and grab a copy of my Amazon best-selling book, Foundations for Liberty. For just $11.99, you can support this radio show by finding a copy on Amazon or by going to mattjmoore.com. Again, that's mattjmoore.com. Don't wait, because freedom is never more than one generation away from extinction. And welcome back, ladies and gentlemen. It is round two, segment two of the Money Block, America's Bitcoin-focused TV and radio show, syndicated coast to coast on Biz TV. Man, we want to thank you for tuning in. In fact, you could be using your time doing so many different things, but today you've chosen to sit down, learn a thing or two about Bitcoin, monetary policy, sound money, and I want to thank you for that. And because of that, if you are new to these ideas, well, you're going to see a QR code that pops up right over there. Be sure to get out your phone, scan that. That is a free gift, my way of saying thank you. It's a copy of my Amazon bestseller, Foundations for Liberty, which will give you the tools and ideas to prime you for this idea about sound money and how it relates to your freedom. But on the line, we've been having a conversation with a gentleman who has got quite the influence in Bitcoin. In fact, he's got an X-following of close to 2 million people. He's got a large podcast he's doing now. His name is Archie. The name of his account is Bitcoin Archive. But I want to bring him on today because he's got his finger on the pulse of Bitcoin culture. He's the perfect person to talk to today about all of this. But, Archie, the first question that I want to start here is, you come from a traditional finance, banking background. You weren't always involved in Bitcoin. COVID had a large part of your transition, but obviously, somewhere along the point, there was this moment where you had this revelation like, Bitcoin is important. I need to go all in on it. Can you talk to us about that pivotal moment where you felt like, hey, this is something I really want to dedicate my life to?
Yeah, well, it was totally by accident that I fell into Bitcoin because I was in COVID. I was unemployed, the whole economy shut down, and I found myself just like, what am I going to do with myself? And so I initially got into Bitcoin as a trade, like a lot of people during that COVID period. I had some money and I wanted to invest it in something to be productive, and I didn't want it to just sit there. And then as I got more and more into the Bitcoin community, I started understanding more about sort of monetary debasement and how it actually robs us of our savings, which we've poured our lifetimes into accumulating. And so essentially, you're being taxed not only twice, 3 times, 4 times, and then at the end of that, when you think you've got what you get to keep, monetary debasement erodes the purchasing power of your savings, and that's felt like, to me, once I realized that was happening, it felt like I was being robbed, and it's just such a profound injustice that I felt like I was subjected to without my knowledge or permission.
Yeah, well, go ahead.
No, so when I realized that Bitcoin was the solution to that it could protect me from that, then I just poured myself into it to get to know more and more about it. And then, hopefully get more people to understand what Bitcoin can do for them.
Yeah, and for myself, I was in gold and silver. I was in that way before Bitcoin, and that's kind of what brought me to Bitcoin, is because I understood sound money. Some people come at it from a different way. Did you go through that point where you're like, maybe I should consider precious metals, or was it like, I found Bitcoin, hands down, it's better, which I agree, but a lot of us, still hold both. What were your thoughts on that?
Well, I'd known about the properties of gold and how people use them to protect themselves from monetary debasement. But I never recognized monetary debasement as being a problem that I had, because, I'd look at the official inflation numbers and I'm like, okay, well, I don't really see a problem with that. They're really low. But it was only after I discovered Bitcoin that I learned that those numbers are phony. They're actually often 3, 4, 5 times 5x higher than the official inflation numbers. And that's when I recognized I had a problem. And of course, so when I sort of came across people promoting gold and silver as something to, that should be a part of your portfolio. I was probably too young to invest in that. I was probably had a higher risk appetite, so I was investing in equities for the most part. It was only through COVID, investing in Bitcoin and then learning that I understood the purpose of holding gold and silver. But having learned about Bitcoin, I just see that as a superior form of what gold and silver wanted to do for thousands of years for society.
Yeah, I agree with you. And, you dive into a lot of topics with your content related to sovereignty, surveillance, systems of control. There's so many, I guess, cultural talking points that Bitcoin hits that get people really passionate about these things. What do you see as the biggest threat to, I guess, your time, labor, and energy, which is the debasement you're talking about, and in general, freedom?
Well, I think there's a sort of digital panopticon being built, a digital control matrix. And my good friend Efrat Fenigson speaks about this in quite a lot of detail. She's a journalist / activist who was big on, personal sovereignty, digital privacy, and also financial sovereignty as well. She's a fellow Bitcoiner. The first thing is they want to make sure that they can monitor and control you within this digital control matrix so that you don't have options when they take punitive action against you. And we've seen, for example, people who have been debanked because they had the wrong political opinions. And I never thought we'd see that happen in a place like Canada, for example. Prior to COVID, we all had a particular view of Canada, of Australia, the United Kingdom, and the United States. These are sort of my cultural bubbles that I've grown up in and very familiar with. But COVID revealed quite a different face to our societies and what happens to how our governments behave under pressure. And since then, we've seen the rapid development of this digital control matrix that includes, a central bank digital currency, constant online surveillance, and the advent of artificial intelligence used to monitor, control, decipher everything everywhere.
Yeah, and so many of the properties of Bitcoin combat that. The one area that people complain about is the potential problem of privacy, depending on how you use Bitcoin. But I'm a believer that, privacy solutions will be built, second, third layer solutions, so on. But it's just that Bitcoin's in this early part of being adopted. And obviously the libertarian idea, separation of state and money, the cypherpunk dream, these have all been parts of Bitcoin. And I hope they maintain as a part of Bitcoin going forward. But how have you seen this narrative change and shift? Is any of this at risk moving forward with Bitcoin?
Well, we should first of all make something clear to our viewers is that Bitcoin is not private. You're anonymous, but it's a public ledger. So, we can all see the transactions, but we don't know who is transacting with whom. We can just see Bitcoin transactions ping from one address to another. So it is a public ledger and it's decentralized. It's one of the virtues of this of Bitcoin's properties is that it is a public, decentralized ledger visible to all. We can all run nodes and we can all view the transactions. We just don't know who is transacting with whom. On subsequent layers like the Bitcoin Lightning layer, yes, there is added privacy there. And there are many layer 2s that have different properties. They optimize for different properties there as well.
Have you had any conversations or thoughts around the potentiality of zero-knowledge proofs around Bitcoin? I know this is a rising topic when it comes to privacy in Bitcoin.
So on a technical topic like zero knowledge proofs, I'm going to have to defer to the technical community, and I can't speak on that.
That's fine. Well, it's interesting to see where Bitcoin where it's been and where it's going. And a lot of people look at the adoption of Bitcoin, some of the things that are happening being inevitable. Do you think the level of state adoption and corporation adoption is going to take away from some of Bitcoin's culture, or do you think Bitcoin's going to basically be the Trojan horse?
I think what we're seeing is a collision and diffusion of both cultures. So we've got a very strong, concentrated Bitcoin culture in the community, and then we've got TradFi and the mainstream consumer culture as well. And what I hope is that we have an awakening within the mainstream about what necessitates Bitcoin. And so as a result of that, as a society, broadly, we're much more diligent about the abuse of powers, whether it's financial, political, economic, societal, judicial. So I hope that we as Bitcoiners infuse many of our ideals within the mainstream, and Bitcoin serves as a vehicle to sort of heighten awareness.
Yeah, I agree. And, you know, as we move forward in this this conversation, especially in the coming segments, I want to dive more into some more of the philosophical things. But when it comes to, you know, Bitcoin and stable coins, I mean, obviously stable coins have been, you know, praised, especially by the federal government and other governments around the country. Do you think those are risk, even though we're moving away from the idea of a central bank digital currency?
Yes, stable coins present additional risk because they are effectively programmable money. And when money is programmable, they can put conditions on how you spend it, where you spend it, who you spend it with. So there are definitely additional risks there. But over and above that, it's essentially just another payment rail. There's nothing wrong with using them. Just understand that if you're totally dependent on stable coins, then you're totally controllable as well because of their programmable nature. So just be aware of that. And that's why we need Bitcoin. We need an alternative to be able to be financially sovereign and to be able to transact with whoever we want, whenever we want, however we want. So there are lots of examples of various lobbying groups, the World Economic Forum, for example, and other groups suggesting that, you know, we could put a limit on how much a person might be able to spend based on their carbon footprint. And now that might mean there's a limit on how much meat you can eat. You might have a meat quota, for example. And now that to me is anathema. I just want to avoid that. We should be able to buy whatever we want, whenever we want.
We got to run to break, but when we come back, we're going to go more into those ideas because you bring up some really good points. And if you guys are watching this, stay tuned because you're going to learn a lot. I promise you. This is The Money Block. We'll be right back after this break. And welcome back, ladies and gentlemen. You are tuned in to The Money Block, America's Bitcoin-focused TV and radio show. We're so thankful that you tuned in. If you're new to Bitcoin, welcome. We got something for everybody. And today, we've been having a conversation with a guest who's made quite an impact when it comes to communicating the cultures, the narrative, the commentary. He's been in the middle of it, archiving it all. His name is Archie, and his account on X is the Bitcoin Archive. If you want to check him out, you can search that on X. But before I bring him back to finish our conversation or to continue the conversation, I'm so thankful that you guys tuned in that I want to give you a free gift. In fact, you're going to see a QR code that pops up right over there. Go ahead and scan that. That's my way of saying thank you. It's a free download of my Amazon bestseller, Foundations for Liberty. It'll give you the ideas and prime you for some of this conversation that we have in Bitcoin quite frequently when it comes to money and sovereignty. But let's go ahead and kick it off. Let's continue the conversation. Like I said, on the line, I have got Archie. Archie, I want to start this segment with this question. You know, the beautiful thing about Bitcoin is it is decentralized. It is born from the free market. And many people have different ideas. And so those narratives can often go several different directions. And we're witnessing that right now when it comes to core versus knots, the spam debate, BIP 110. These are all things that are heavy talked about on X right now. People are getting stressed out. People are, you know, voicing their opinions. And a lot of us may not know where to settle in this debate. What's your thoughts on the debate that's currently taking place in Bitcoin? Do you have any feelings towards it? Any hot takes?
I haven't really been compelled to take a view one way or the other. As I was saying to you earlier, you know, there are people I deeply respect within the Bitcoin space, both technical and non-technical, who are on opposite sides of this. And both camps are equally vehement about what is best for Bitcoin. And I'm of the view that I just think the free market's got to sort it out. Whoever is the most convincing, well, make your case and we'll hear it. And if you can convince enough people, that's the beauty of decentralization and consensus, is that if you can convince enough people, you're right. And if you can't, well, then, you know, the market has spoken.
Yeah. Policy,
but there's no doubt in my mind that, you know, they're well-intentioned and both sides have the best intentions for Bitcoin. There's no doubt of that in my mind. I know that there are all sorts of pejorative thrown around at each other and sort of insults, but that's kind of like the culture of how we solve problems within the Bitcoin space. It's really quite a combative sort of culture where there's nothing held back whatsoever, and we really just let it all out there and have it out. And that way, as an observer of this sort of dialogue, at least I know I'm getting the best of both sides of the debate.
And, I agree. It is a beautiful thing to watch, despite it being messy, because it's unlike anything that typically happens when we talk about, money at the sovereign level of these governments. But, what do you say to those who are watching all this and they're new and they're just now getting into Bitcoin? They're like, hey, this is freaking me out. I don't know how to take this. Is this even stable? What would you say or give advice to those who are worried about this divide?
Yeah, because I think that's a very healthy thing to have every now and then, so that we can develop a consensus about the way forward. And this is just how it happens. And you don't have to do anything. So if you're not convinced of supporting one group or another, don't do anything. Let the consensus sort it out. There are more than 100 million Bitcoin holders around the world. And just have faith in the wisdom of crowds. And this is why we need to have sort of open, frank, and sometimes really combative discussions, is so that we can have all the information out there for other people like us to observe and to make up our minds if we choose to do that. Doing nothing is also a viable, feasible decision to make.
So you've been in Bitcoin for some time now, and I'm sure you came to the space with ideas, conclusions, but is there anything along your Bitcoin journey where you thought, I hold this opinion about Bitcoin, but now I look at it a few different ways? Is there anything you've changed your mind on?
Yeah, I was all in on Bitcoin, so all in, my total net worth. Because I was maniacally focused on, because I did get into Bitcoin during a bull market, you see, and right at the start of a bull market. And so I enjoyed tremendous gains. And now that we've had sort of a 5-year period of relatively flat performance, we had a bit of an up, and now we've got to draw down. My personal opinion is that we are very close to the bottom. So it's an excellent time to start making allocations, in my personal opinion, not financial advice, but it's just my observations of the various cycles that Bitcoin has gone through, that I'm starting to recognize some indicators flipping over to say we are approaching the end of this bear market cycle. So what's changed is that now I am much more open-minded about allocating to other things. So I have sold some Bitcoin to invest in my business. I know other people have sold Bitcoin to invest in some securities. A good friend of mine has sold some Bitcoin to invest in certain AI companies, for example. Perfectly legitimate thing to do. Other people are still all in and are allocating even more of their capital towards Bitcoin. It all depends on what your financial objectives are. So it's perfectly legitimate thing to do, especially if you're older, you don't have a greater risk appetite to be able to sort of ride the ups and downs of Bitcoin. Well, then maybe you should look at Bitcoin as a form of insurance against monetary debasement. And you say, okay, I might just start with 5, 10, 15, 20%. And then with everything else, I'm going to allocate it according to the rest of my financial strategy. You might be planning for your retirement. It may be planning for estate, sort of inheritance planning. Whatever it is, make Bitcoin a part of it as it fits into your overall financial objectives. But make it a part of it. Allocate some.
And is that, you think a lot of Bitcoiners have grown up with Bitcoin. They got in maybe in their 20s, maybe even younger. And now a lot of us who've been in the space for over a decade or so will be like, oh man, I've made substantial amount of wealth now. And so do you think this diversification, this, taking allocations into other things is playing a part with this Bitcoin cohort growing up together and making a lot of money?
So it comes back to what I said before. Definitely, it depends on your financial objectives, and that you got to consider where you are in life with respect to that. There are lots and lots of OG Bitcoiners, people who are very, very early on, and some of them have made ungodly amounts of money, incredible amounts of money. Who is going to begrudge them after holding for 10, 11, 12 years that they may want to sell 10, 20% of their holdings, even 50, 60%. And to be honest with you, if they sold 90% of their holdings, I wouldn't begrudge them that, because they had, whether by luck or by conviction, they held through all of that. And anyone who's been through a bull and bear market cycle will tell you how unbelievably convicted you have to be, how emotionally stoic you have to be to go through that and not sell down. Or they've been through 4 bull markets, 4 bear markets. Imagine watching your portfolio draw down 60, 70, 80% 3 or 4 times. And then finally you're like, I think I might sell some, take care of the family. How can you begrudge that? I can't. I just commend them for the fantastic conviction they had early on and to hold throughout all that time. And I think they've earned the gains, because anyone who's held through a bear market knows you definitely earn the gains in Bitcoin, because watching your portfolio go down and holding all the way through that, and disregarding the media narrative about Bitcoin and staying true to your conviction, that's where you get rewarded.
Yeah, good points. That's a concept, diamond hands, a lot of us had talked about early on. But, man, we got to go to break. I want you guys to stay put, stay tuned. We got more with Archie, and we're going to dive deeper into his passion, his connection to the Bitcoin community. Stay put. You won't regret it. And welcome back, ladies and gentlemen. You have tuned in to The Money Block, America's Bitcoin TV and radio show on Biz TV, syndicated coast to coast. I want to thank you guys for tuning in. Today we've been having a great conversation around Bitcoin with one of Bitcoin's greatest ex-influencers. And so we're excited about this conversation. We've been enjoying his takes on things, his personal journey as well. But before I bring him back to continue this great conversation, again, I just want to say thank you for watching. You can spend your time doing a lot of different things, but today you've chosen to learn about Bitcoin and the difference that it's making in the world. And because of that, I'm going to give you a free gift. It's a Amazon bestseller, Foundations for Liberty. If you scan that QR code, it'll, again, give you the primer, the ideas that are so prevalent in the Bitcoin space. And a lot of you guys who watch this television show are new to Bitcoin, and there's nothing wrong with that, but it's the perfect tool. All right, guys, I'm going to go ahead and continue this, get the train rolling again. On the line, we've got Archie. He is the owner of the X account, the Bitcoin Archive. And like I said, he's been making quite the difference with the conversation, the commentary, the narrative when it comes to Bitcoin. And, Archie, I want to pick it up here. You made some big changes in your life. You went to El Salvador. You've been involved in these communities that are circular Bitcoin economies. Given that it's 2026, stable coins are also popular. People are debating about the evolutionary phase of Bitcoin. Collectible, store of value, medium of exchange, then a true measure of wealth. We're obviously in this store of value phase or early into it. What's your take on Bitcoin being used as a medium of exchange? Do we still have some time to go? Is it going to be decades from now? What have you witnessed in El Salvador?
Well, El Salvador was a fascinating example, because I went there in 2022, 4 years ago. And I think the marketing message was a little bit ahead of the reality at that time. And, understandably slow. They'd only just adopted Bitcoin as legal tender. And El Zonte, which is also known as Bitcoin Beach, where the project first started, that was a place where, they'd seeded the idea and it was growing. But, like I said, the marketing message was ahead of reality. Now, 4 years later, it was ubiquitous. It was everywhere. The pupusa stand to the hotel bill to a bar, restaurant, everywhere is as ubiquitous as, cash and card or Bitcoin. Like, it was not even a thing to ask, The machines were turned on. It was integrated into terminals. Waiters were all, familiar with it and prepared to accept tips in Bitcoin. Everybody knew Bitcoin and everybody knew how to accept Bitcoin. Now, that's just a 4-year period in a very small place, which is, a small surf town in El Zonte in El Salvador. So I think people are a little bit impatient for Bitcoin to be adopted as a means of exchange, but then underestimate the progress that we do make in, 4 or 5 years' time. And we shouldn't be sleeping on the fact that, one of the largest merchant payment providers in the United States, which is Jack Dorsey's Stripe. No, Block, yeah. I think, what's his company called?
Yeah,
Stripe or Stripe?
You got
Stripe.
Block, yeah.
Yeah. So it's like he's got a company there and they've enabled Bitcoin payments at millions of merchants. And all you need to do as the person paying, as the customer, is press a button to convert the invoice into Bitcoin, and you can pay that. And the merchant does not need to even know. They don't care. They will receive whichever currency that they want, whether it's US dollars, Canadian dollars, whatever it is their local currency is. And Bitcoin doesn't need to even touch their account. But you can pay in Bitcoin, and they make the conversion before the merchant receives their value. So sometimes we just need to be a little bit patient. The technological infrastructure is being rolled out. We've got payment companies making the adjustment, Visa, MasterCard. We've got banks adjusting as well. So, a lot of adoption is happening, but sometimes it takes a little while and we need to be patient. And so as long as the sort of technological infrastructure is developing, we should be encouraged by that, I think.
Good stuff. Well, on another note, you have this podcast that's growing and really popular with Bitcoiners. You've talked to a lot of very interesting people, and the one thing I love about Bitcoin is just the intellectual variety and depth that is in the Bitcoin space. In your opinion, out of all the people you've spoken with while being in Bitcoin, what's been the most fascinating person to interact with when it comes to these ideas? Is there anybody that sticks out the most to you?
I've loved meeting all of them, to be honest with you. Like the obvious one, I spoke to Saylor. I've interviewed him on Spaces in the last cycle. So that was like 4 or 5 years ago. Lynn Alden is absolutely incredible. She's a macro analyst and a Bitcoin analyst as well. And she has a fantastic newsletter. You should all subscribe to an investment and macro newsletter. She's fantastic. And then, you have some of the more sort of quietly spoken technical people who are not really into gathering attention in the limelight. And I also spoke to Satoshi's first collaborator after the launch of Bitcoin, whose name is Marty Malmian, who's really quietly spoken guy, was only 19 or 20 years old at the time, and is a very introverted person, very intelligent. And so just sitting down to talk to him and what his story was as a 19, 20-year-old to what was he even doing in cypherpunk circles at that age? Did he have a political ideology? Who has such a well-formed ideology at 19? I certainly didn't. And so I was fascinated about his journey in Bitcoin and in sort of cypherpunk circles and what Bitcoin was like in the earliest days. We tend to look back now after 17 years and think it was always this inevitable success, but it wasn't such. Marty and Satoshi had to work and almost conspire to draw attention to Bitcoin because people just thought, oh yeah, it was just another project. It was just this other, cryptographic sort of attempt at electronic money. And there have been dozens and dozens of these attempts. So what was to distinguish Bitcoin? And so they would sit together digitally, exchange emails and conspire to how do we get people to pay attention to it? How do we get the first transaction? And, Marty sold a lot of his early Bitcoin stash to buy a property. And then we have Laszlo famously, we have Bitcoin Pizza Day because the first commercial transaction was someone who spent 10,000 Bitcoin buying 2 Papa John pizzas, right? And so these have now become celebrated events. But I've really enjoyed meeting people who are sort of under the surface. They don't really attract too much attention, but they have these really deep and profound Bitcoin experiences.
Well, speaking of being under the surface, for the longest time, your influence has been anonymous in many ways. It wasn't until recent that you started appearing on camera and revealing more. What played into this, and why is this move for your overall brand important?
I think it was a real accident in the beginning and just coincidentally played into sort of the Bitcoin law of being anonymous. It's fairly accepted to be anonymous and participating in the cypherpunk community. Not that I'm not a cypherpunk, by the way, but in that community, it was fairly accepted, a normal part of being in that community. And that sort of carried over into the broader Bitcoin community as it became slowly mainstream. You still see remnants of that. A lot of the people engaging in discussion on X, on Twitter, still have anonymous profile pictures. And of course, it's part of the security of, being a Bitcoin holder as well. Most people are very cautious about being publicly known for holding Bitcoin because, there are all sorts of personal attack vectors that they want to avoid. And so for me, I sort of liked it because I never wanted to become public sort of Bitcoin celebrity or a persona within the space. And because the account grew so much, so quickly, I took shelter in that because I didn't want to become famous. I didn't want suddenly 1 million people, because I hit 1 million followers within 15 months. And I didn't want to suddenly expose my day-to-day life to 1 million people and be recognized everywhere without having had the time to adjust to what life would be like if people did say, hi, how you doing, Archie? I follow your account and they want to talk about Bitcoin. And that would, I just didn't want to deal with that. But now it's been 6 years. I've had a lot of time to adjust to it and get comfortable with the idea of, someone wanting to share a moment like that. And I'm quite comfortable with that.
And we've got about a minute or so before we have to go to break. But, that level of growth with your X account, that's probably not normal. How did that, what was that transpiring there? Like you just found a secret with the algorithm or what?
No, what happened was I started it right at the inflection point of incredible demand during COVID. And there was a lot of public demand. There was a lot of people sitting at home online. And I really just killed myself working day and night, like quite literally 17, 18, 19 hours a day for almost like 15 months to 2 years. And I just didn't stop posting, and I kept the community updated. And I think they rewarded me for that with their following. I'm very grateful for.
They sure did. In fact, I've enjoyed following your account. It's been very, in fact, I love retweeting your stuff because it's so informative. But we, again, appreciate you doing this interview. We got one more segment. We're going to finish strong. So, guys, if you're watching this show, stay put, stay tuned, because, this conversation with Archie is not over. And if you're curious about Bitcoin, well, this is the perfect show for you. Call a friend, tell them to tune in. If they're not, if you're watching online, comment, like, share, be a part of the conversation. Let us know what you think. We'll be right back after this break. AI is here, money is changing, but freedom has never been more important. I'm Matthew J. Moore, the Money Block host on Biz TV, Amazon bestseller, and Bitcoin policy advisor. Book my up to 60-minute talk, Redefining Wealth and Freedom God's Way. I'll teach your church, business, or civic group how to secure money, freedom, and faith in the digital age. This is urgent, so I'm slashing my fee from $1,000 to $500. Cover my travel, and I'm there. Scan the QR code now. Spots are filling fast. What does it mean to be physically, spiritually, and financially free? The right to life, liberty, property, and the pursuit of happiness, these were the ideas that made America. But what happens to these ideas when America's money becomes compromised? What do you do when the very thing that you're working for day after day is fundamentally designed to enslave you? Whether it was a conspiracy or not, you won't believe what is about to happen in this country. Arm yourself today with the truth and build your life on the foundations for liberty. Rediscover freedom in the 21st century and grab a copy of my Amazon best-selling book, Foundations for Liberty. For just $11.99, you can support this radio show by finding a copy on Amazon or by going to mattjmoore.com. Again, that's mattjmoore.com. Don't wait, because freedom is never more than one generation away from extinction. And welcome back, ladies and gentlemen. Final round of the Money Block. We've been having a great conversation. I want to welcome all you Bitcoin newbies, lovers, and experts. We are syndicated coast to coast on Biz TV Network. And, if you're watching online, well, be sure to comment, like, share, be a part of the conversation. Let us know what you think. Today, we've been talking with a great guest. His name is Archie. He runs an X account known as the Bitcoin Archive. Close to 2 million followers, and has made quite the presence and positive influence on Bitcoin, I would say. But we've been talking about his journey. We've been talking about the impact of Bitcoin, what he's doing now. But I want to take the conversation here, Archie. We do see your X account and your personal brand. It's developed, how it's developed. I mean, but where is the future for your brand and what you want to see happen with what you're doing in the space? I mean, would you consider yourself a Bitcoin historian?
No, not at all. I think we have a Bitcoin historian. His
We
name's
do.
Pete Rizzo. He does a fantastic job of documenting the history of Bitcoin, and he's been around much longer than I have as well. And he's kind of taken a little bit of a sabbatical from posting about Bitcoin history, as he's running a Bitcoin treasury media company, not a Bitcoin treasury company as such. But the archiving thing, I do want to set up an archive eventually that actually documents the history of Bitcoin, and also like that we can track the tweets based on historical events, and so that people can go back and say, well, what were people saying around that time on Twitter when Saylor first bought, for example, and so that people can track that. So I do want to build that, but it's a media business. It's a fairly conventional digital first media business. And the next step for us is really growing the podcast. So we've got Bitcoin Archive on YouTube and all the major podcast platforms, and eventually also launch a news site as well. So the news site is in development, and we've also got a newsletter. If you go to bitcoinarchive.co, you can subscribe to that.
And if those who are watching want to follow you on X or follow your YouTube channel, are the handles the same?
Yeah, they're all the same. So Bitcoin Archive on YouTube, Bitcoin Archive on X, and on Instagram. For those of I don't know if your audience goes on Instagram, it's actually btc.archive. We weren't able to get that handle there, unfortunately.
Well, when you set up the account, was it just like, hey, I'm going to randomly call it Bitcoin Archive, or was there meaning to that?
Well, I can't remember what I was thinking, actually. It wasn't that deep, to be honest with you. And I just, all I did was set up the Twitter account at the time. And so I didn't go to grab the domain, which someone else took and is now trying to actively sell to me, which of course I'm not going to buy it. Like, I made that valuable and you're trying to extort me. No, it's not going to happen. Yeah. I'll never buy that from you, buddy. So there wasn't too much thought given into it. I just wanted a name that was catchy and it resonated with an audience and there was some kind of value to it. And so, I may build a digital archive eventually, but for now, it's essentially just a Bitcoin media company.
Well, a lot of people who watch this show are new to Bitcoin, and some of them may have just bought Bitcoin for the very first time. And a lot of Bitcoiners are always they're preaching the message, get off zero. But my question to you is not, we're not giving financial advice, but if you had to give advice to anybody new to Bitcoin right now and they're trying to navigate all this, what would be the advice you'd give them?
First, buy a little bit, like a meaningless amount, and just keep track of Bitcoin. Watch the price. If you're really interested in buying and you don't really know if you should go all in now or buy a little bit at a time, now's actually a really good time to just spread out whatever you're going to allocate, whether it's 1%, 5%, 10, 15, 20%, whatever it is in your world that makes a difference to you, and say, you know what? Regardless of what the price does from here until the end of the year, I'm going to be buying daily or weekly, and there are services out there that can set that up for you, and they just automatically do that, regardless of what the price is, and at a razor thin margins, and some of them might even do it for zero fee commission if you're a customer of theirs. So that's what I would do to mitigate the risk. So if you're worried about buying all of your allocation now, but what if it goes down lower, or you just don't care about picking the bottoms of bear markets, then we call dollar cost averaging. It's a sound, fundamental way of allocating your portfolio.
And for the Bitcoiners who might be watching online, because we will post this on X and YouTube, if people are watching and they're just very they're very focused and dialed into Bitcoin, maybe they're contributing to Bitcoin culture and narrative at large, what kind of advice would you give to just regular Bitcoiners in this moment in time?
Live your life, enjoy life. Bitcoin doesn't have to consume everything that you do, but if you find that there are aspects of Bitcoin culture that interest you, dive deep into it and get involved in the community, because there are other people just like you who want to actually engage with like-minded people and exchange ideas, exchange book recommendations, documentary recommendations, discuss certain points of monetary history, certain events of history in the context of, monetary policy as well. So get involved in the community. You don't have to be a famous person. I didn't know anybody when I started the account, and it was my way of getting involved in the community. And then as I gained traction, it gave me the ability to serve the community. So you don't have to develop a large following. You can just be one of those relatively small anonymous accounts who just engages in conversation and dialogue, and lots of people appreciate that, because that's what makes a community, right? Some people create content, other people support that content, engage in the dialogue, and there's room for everybody.
With roughly 1 minute left, what are Bitcoiners doing right and what are they doing wrong?
I think we could do a better job of what we call orange pilling. That is convincing people about the necessity of Bitcoin and the virtues of Bitcoin's properties. Sometimes we try to impress them too much with how much we already know, which is often something that's taken us years to accumulate certain knowledge, rather than trying to understand where the person is in their life right now and to be able to relate to the problems that they can already identify. So I think most people in life right now can identify inflation, the rising cost of everyday items, from rent to your supermarket shopping to your electricity and utility bills, as a point that's a pain point in your life. And I think we need to make people understand better why that's happening in the first instance, which is almost always monetary debasement, and then how Bitcoin helps protect someone against that.
That's good. Good advice. And I do concur with you on that. I think we could do a better job in how we approach those who are new to Bitcoin, convincing them that, hey, this is a smart decision and here's why. Guys, I am so thankful. This has been a great conversation. Thank you, Archie. We'll see you guys same time, same place. Adios.
The opinions and suggestions expressed on this program are solely those of the participants and are not necessarily endorsed by program sponsors or any station, media company, or platform broadcasting this program. This program is a product of More Media, LLC. The information in this broadcast is not intended as investment, tax, or financial advice. Matthew Moore is not a licensed investment advisor and speaks solely from his experience and opinions. All information in this broadcast is for entertainment or educational purposes only. Matthew Moore, More Media, LLC, and the company or platform broadcasting this program is not responsible for the success or failure of any person's investment decisions or purchases. Matthew Moore, More Media, LLC, and the company or platform broadcasting this program makes no and expressly disclaims all representations, warranties, and guarantees with respect to this broadcast and its sponsors. Investing in any market is inherently risky and can be financially dangerous. Invest at your own risk.